Alright, hello guys, welcome back to my lesson. In the previous video, we've discussed and studied about adding vectors using polygon method. Now in this video, I will be discussing with you adding vectors, right? So we have adding vectors using analytical method. Okay, using analytical method. When you say analytical, we will be using here the trigonometric function. Okay, so the basic of that is the so ka to wa. Okay, the basic of the trigonometric functions is the SOHCAHTOA. So always remember this. Sine theta is equal to opposite over the hypotenuse. Cosine theta is equal to adjacent over the hypotenuse. Tangent theta is equal to opposite over the adjacent. Okay, so if this is the triangle, this is the angle. Okay, so if this is a triangle, this is the angle, this is the opposite angle, and this is the adjacent angle. This is the hypotenuse. You all know that in your basic algebra. Okay, now next, in analytical method, you have to consider the x component and the y component. Okay, what is this? Because in this particular lesson, the vectors act on a specific angle. Okay, for example, if this is the Cartesian plane and this is the origin, if the vector acts on this area, for example, you are dragging or pulling a table, for example, you are pulling a table, and the rope acts like this at an angle. So if that rope acts at an angle, therefore, there is a force dragging you horizontally, and there is also force dragging you vertically. In these forces, Fy and Fx, with the F, are called the components. Okay? So these are called the components. So Fx is the component of this force along x-axis, and Fy is the component of this force along y-axis. Okay? So, mababawasan po itong force na to kasi may humahatak dito, may humahatak doon. Now, how do we find this? How do we find the component of this? And how do we find the value of this? Okay? So, example. Let's try this. This is, let's take 5 Newton, 30 degrees north of east. Okay, so that is the vector 5 newtons 30 degrees north of east. How do we find the value of Fy and the value of Fx? So we extend the x, so kasi nandun siya, ayun siya, so we draw this. This is now it's parallel to the y, so therefore this is the Fy or the y component. Since this is along x, so we're gonna draw a broken line also. Okay? Or we can draw it here para mas nakikita nyo. So this is the Fx or the horizontal component. How do we do that? So this is the angle, right? And this is 30 degrees. So we will go back to this SOHCAHTOA because we are now using an angle. So to find Fx, what is Fx? Meaning to say the horizontal component of the force 5N. So what is this side of this angle? Adjacent or opposite? This is adjacent. Okay? So we have cosine theta equals adjacent over hypotenuse. What is our adjacent? We do not know. So we Fx. Do we know now the value of the hypotenuse? Alam ba natin? Yes, this is 5. Ito yan siya, 5. 5 Newton. Do we know the angle? Yes, we know the angle. The angle is, dito natin. Okay, so we have cosine theta is equal to fx over 5n, 5 Newton. Okay? So what is the angle? The angle is cosine 30 degrees equals, we do not know the value of fx or the force along x
Milk.
over 5. Okay? So anong gagawin natin? So we have to find the value of fx, cross multiply. So 5n times cosine 30. What is cosine 30? Okay? So you can use your calculator to find cosine 60. Right? So just a moment, I'll get my calculator to find the cosine 30. So the value of cosine 30 is, so 5 Newton times that would be cosine 30 pala, akala ko 35, 30 class. So that would be cosine 30, and the value is 0.866 fx, and therefore the answer is, you have to multiply it by 5. .33 Newton is your force along the x-axis. So you will now have here 4.33 Newton. Okay, that's how to find the value of the x. Now let's proceed and look for the value of y. Okay, the value of y. So if we have, and what is y? So therefore that's the opposite. So let's use sine theta is equal to opposite over the hypotenuse. So we have sine theta equals opposite divided by 5n, and 5n times sine theta equals fy. This is fy, and this is fy, because we are looking for the y component of the force. So what is the value of sine 30? Okay, sine 30. So 30 sine, the value is 0.5. So this is 5n times 0.5 equals fy. Okay? So 0.5 times 5 is 2.5 Newton fy. So we have the value now of fy. So we will put it here. The y component is, the fy is equal to 2.5 Newton. Now, to make it a bit easier for you to understand, you have to use a table. Okay? So I will now introduce the table. So our first vector is 5 Newton, 30 degrees north of east. So this is the x component and the y component. Now, again, so we're gonna put the value of x, which is 4.33 Newton. The y is 2.5 Newton. So this is how to get the x and the y component. But we're not done yet. Why? Because we have to add. But before we proceed on adding it, let me just remind you of this. Okay? In a Cartesian plane, You have x, you have y, you have x, you have y, you have x, right? This is a positive y, this is a negative y, and this is negative x, and this is the positive x, right? So here, coordinate, you have x positive, y positive, x negative, y negative, x negative, y negative, and this is x positive, y negative. Okay? So, what is the importance of this? In our table, okay, in our table that we will be making, this is the x component and the y component. If the angle or the vector falls on the first quadrant, then the x is positive and y is positive. If the vector falls on the second quadrant, x is negative, y is positive. Okay? If it falls here on the third quadrant, x is negative, y is negative. If it falls on the fourth quadrant, the vector, x is positive, y is negative. So, if you have given a vector, let's say for example, the direction is east of north or north of east, this is your sign, first quadrant. Take note of that, okay? If the direction is given to you as west of north or north of west, then this is your second value. Always remember that. Because later on, you will be using the sign to algebraically add them. Okay? And then here, if it falls in the third quadrant, so this is, the direction must be south of west or west of south, then you have this. If it falls here, the direction is north, or sorry, east of south or south of east, then you have this direction. Okay? So, remember that.